live whenever it tells us, and it tells us that we are live because we gotta wait. We gotta wait until right now. It is our week 17 preview here on the Audible. That's right, it's the footballguys.com podcast. And we appreciate everyone for watching on our YouTube channel, for listening via Apple Podcasts, Spotify, etc. We won't belabor too much, but Bloom, before we get started, you shouldn't be playing in week 17. And please, I'm seeing an infestation of these like 2-week championship formats. It's like, let's just add more randomness in.
Yeah.
So yeah, we won't beat you over the head with it, but every year we remind you, make sure you play in a league that's done in week 16.
True. Although, hey, and I mean, we're not going to dive deep on the fantasy angles this week in the preview. Although, I mean, at least a 2-week, week 17, week 16 Super Bowl is half as random as the week 17 week Super Bowl by itself. And also week 17 DFS, for folks that have been really managing their season-long teams with a lot of care and effort, and now that's over. Well, maybe you dabble. Isn't that funny, Cease, to pick the most random week to tip your toes in for DFS? But when I think of week 17, Cease, I just think of all of the stories to come, all of the chapters to be written, and a lot of the questions, like the cliffhangers that lead us into the next season.
Razzle dazzle as we jump through the schedule today, or for Sunday's games. The Jets at Buffalo, Bloom. And well, we'll toss it up like this for our special week 17 edition. Let's talk about both sides here, because you've got, Le'Veon Bell maybe playing somewhere else next year. And,
right.
Again, there's not a lot of fantasy angles here in this week's show, but there's some interesting storylines. Buffalo to go charging into the postseason. The ever popular question about resting your starters, or do you get the most out of them so they're not cold when it comes to the postseason, so that they are continuing to play at a high level. And that's where you get to the Buffalo side of things with all the names that we've been talking about all season long. What are you looking for, expecting to see from Jets at Buffalo on Sunday?
Well, for every team playing this week, there's at least one player that I want to put under the microscope for future evaluation. But also, we're looking at the stories to come. And I'm always thinking at this 30,000-foot level, and we've talked about this multiple times in the last few weeks. It's just, with the Jets, Adam Gase, no Le'Veon Bell, probably no Robbie Anderson. There was one report that Miami's going to go after him. He's not going to come back, probably. What is this team going to look like? Poor Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold, you just hunker down and wait for the next coach. Or maybe are we wrong about Adam Gase? Will Adam Gase prove us wrong? I don't know. Trevon Wesco, the Matt Waldman favorite. That's the future player I'm looking at with Ryan Griffin. Got an extension banged up. Chris Herndon couldn't stay healthy. Trevon Wesco, let's see what he can do. But Gase is kind of like, if this was professional wrestling, he's a heel, right? Like he's one of the bad guys, right? When we see him, the crowd's like, whoa, and maybe that's where we're headed there. For Buffalo, I think the story is they lost last week to New England. They're making the playoffs. Remember when making the playoffs was such a big deal a few years ago? Well, the fans and probably the team isn't satisfied with that. They fall short against the Patriots again. Josh Allen, it's there, it's not there. We'll see where this team measures up. I would imagine they're going to be playing Houston. As far as a fantasy future to look at here, Robert Foster, who was tremendous last year, went to the background with John Brown in tow this year, and different guys are playing ahead of him, like Duke Williams at times. What can he do in this game that probably will see the starters for a series at most?
By the way, our man Brandon, and I love all of our YouTube comments because we get to show it on the screen. We get to see you guys. Might be the best shirt ever.
Yeah.
Sick.
I like it. I got some new ones. I got one of the shirts for Christmas from a single bear. Different one than one you got, Cease.
Really? Okay. Yeah. Does it say I'm always at least a little scared?
No, it's a different one.
A different one. Okay. Yeah. See, and I think our wardrobe choices say a lot about us, because I've got the sparkly, shiny, look at me shirt, and you've got the flowers, organic.
Yeah, we're on the beach.
Natural.
We're on a deserted island.
Here we go. We're going to talk about the next game up, week 17. It is the Browns. It is Cincinnati. And Andy Dalton, DGAF, because this is Joe Burrow's team next year for the Bengals side of things. And, well, Tyler Boyd, who else we're going to see here? Joe Mixon do his thing. And on the Browns side of things, it's like, well, are they going to keep it together? News with the Falcons today. We'll get to it in a little bit. But, Falcons get some news because they were playing for their coach. I don't know what the hell Cleveland's playing for, Bloom.
No, I don't know. The note I have, Cease, is kitchens sink. I don't know. Yeah, dad jokes, right? I don't know. Is it good? Is it bad? What's going to foster Mayfield's growth? I mean, look, I'll say this, Cease. If you're a CEO type of the Browns organization, you have to make some changes on offense, right? I don't know if it's coming in and saying, hey, bring in someone like Mike Shanahan, right? To sit in the corner and say, here's some ideas. You know what I'm saying? Like something. Change. You can't look at the 2019 season on offense and say we're going to keep intact everybody who built that to keep building whatever it is they were building. Maybe it's Todd Monken having a larger role. We'll see. They've got a decision about Kareem Hunt and restricted free agency, or perhaps maybe the other 31 teams have that decision. Is Odell Beckham even going to be a Brown when the season starts next year? That story continues. We're hearing Jarvis Landry's going to maybe have hip surgery. David Njoku, all the air went out of his balloon this year, not just because of the injury. So just questions about the Browns. And I suppose, when we look at going into 2019 and going out of 2019 and the path of the Browns, it's cruel, so you get into like questions of religion and higher powers. Like, why do this to the Browns fan base? Why make all this hype and hope just to end up right back where you always end up? For Cincinnati, it's Joe Burrow time. And Joe Burrow has a whole other story to write with LSU. Will AJ Green be back next year? I'm going to be watching John Ross in this game to see what he can do. This is going to be. I'll also watch some Ricky Seals-Jones on the Cleveland side. So
on
New
the
Hope
Bengals side too, Bloom. I'm going to be watching Andy Dalton because we talk about a guy that can make himself some money.
Yes.
Look at the quarterbacks that are going to be available because someone's going to pick up Cam Newton. Someone might pick up Phillip Rivers. Maybe Tom Brady's out there, right? There's been rumblings or whatever, but like someone's going to get Andy Dalton. So what are they going to get? He's got another opportunity to showcase his skill set against the Browns team that, going down the drain.
Right. Well, that's the thing. And we got to do more off-season content this year, because we should do a free agency preview where we talk about what fits would be good for Andy Dalton once we see where some of the other quarterback dominoes fall. But I think the Bengals have more hope than the Browns right now of these two Ohio teams.
Yeah, because Joe Burrow.
Yeah.
Because the talent, like Odell Beckham Jr., I don't think comes back. By the way, this is our 223rd episode of the year, of the 2019 calendar year.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, if we push to 250, remember that one year we almost had 400? And I was like, I want 400. Like, yeah, it's not 400. We're
not Ted Williams 400. That's a baseball reference, Cease.
Oh, okay. Thank you for that, Sig. But yeah, we'll get you 250 next year. Sounds about right. We got Bagley 232 joining the show for the first time. So thank you all for checking out the show. However you find us, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, what have you. We've been doing this since 2006. So we certainly appreciate each and every one of you out there. Green Bay and Detroit is our next game to preview. Again, this is different from our regular preview shows where we go one side and then the other side and fantasy this and fantasy that. It's just storylines. It's just, well, where are these teams at? And with Green Bay, I want to pick the brain of our man Aaron Nagler from Cheesehead TV. It's like, well, how do you feel if you're Green Bay right now? Because you're like, you got Aaron Jones, you feel good about that. Devontae Adams, of course, when he's healthy, you feel good about that. And kind of Aaron Rodgers sometimes. Other than that, do you feel like you can make a deep postseason run? You're going to clown hammer the Lions. There's no doubt about it. Whatever. Kenny Golladay do his thing, whatever. But like, it's more of a, what do you go into the postseason feeling like if you're Green Bay?
Yeah, it's odd, right? Because win and you get the number one seed, I think that's how it works out for the Packers in this one. It doesn't feel like it's been that triumphant of a season, right? I mean, Baltimore gets the number one seed in the AFC. Hulk, they're the best team in the AFC right now. Is Green Bay the best team in the NFC? But that's the NFC for you. And I guess you have to feel good about knowing you'll play all your games in Lambeau if you beat Detroit. And the defense looked a lot better in the first half of the year than the second half of the year. But, the playoffs are kind of a reset. They have talents. They have those talents up front. And let it be said that getting Zadarius Smith and Preston Smith really did change the complexion of this defense. Maybe Rashawn Gary does something here. Rodgers seems to create momentum against really bad defenses. Detroit's been playing by like one. Alan Lazard maybe emerging as the number two. He's a little banged up. What's going on with Jay Sternberger, by the way? He was a healthy scratch last week.
Right.
Robert Tonyan, anyone? Because we know it ain't Jimmy Graham. Looking at the tight ends, Aaron Jones became a star this year. a star. I mean, I know that it was up and down because of his usage, and that leads us back to Matt LaFleur and see something in linguistically like the flower, right? Smelling like a rose. I mean, he hasn't necessarily done whiz kid offensive stuff. He hasn't necessarily reinvented the wheel, but this is way better. Is it a ding dong the witch is dead Mike McCarthy? Like just the weight being lifted of not having Mike McCarthy.
Well, the conflict, Bloom. I mean, we know that in football and life there's conflict, and the conflict between Rodgers and McCarthy was something that took away from the team. When you have LaFleur, maybe not being the magical wave your wand super genius that, well, I thought he was, it's still healthy, because there's a healthier surrounding in the building.
And right, when mom and dad are fighting, like sometimes you don't do as well at school, start getting into fights and stuff yourself at school. I don't know. On the Detroit side, Patricia year 3, Patricia Quinn.
Yay.
Okay. Can carry on Johnson get end on a high note? This is going to be a big year for him aligning with this offense. And remember, this team was a good team through the first 4 games of the year. We looked at this team like this is a pretty good team. They just lost to Kansas City in a great back and forth heavyweight type battle. So maybe that's a reason to keep Matt Patricia and feel good about it. Logan Thomas is a guy I want to watch. I think he looks good. I think he looks like a real tight end. I know he's like 28 or 29, but got a late start, converted quarterback. I will applaud whatever team signs Logan Thomas in free agency this year.
Next game up in a Week 17 preview, and well, this one in the AFC West, the Chargers against Kansas City. This is Phillip Rivers' last game with the Chargers.
Or last game period.
Last game period, as we know, in that class. We'll get to Ben Roethlisberger when we get to the Steelers, but like Eli is done. Looks like he's done. Phillip Rivers looks like he's done. This last hurrah in this one against Kansas City, who actually, can have something to play for. Bloom, am I right? I got the playoff scenarios I got to pull up in front of me, but like, okay, you're Kansas City. I guess the only thing I'm watching for the Chiefs is how that backfield rotation works. Now with Spencer Ware on IR, he was there for what, like 3 weeks again, and then back to IR. So, okay, are you actually going to use LaShawn McCoy? Or is he in the doghouse? Not necessarily with Andy Reid, by the way, Bloom. Maybe more with Eric Bieniemy, according to, Little Birdie. So we'll see. That backfield usage always kind of a big question mark for the Chiefs. And then we'll see with Phillip Rivers. Like, does he go out with a bang, a fizzle, a sizzle? What's going on here?
Right. Is this it for Rivers? Is this it for him as a Charger? And, I was thinking about this, Cecil, because I was thinking about it from the agent point of view. When I was on the All-Star road trip with you every year, we spent a lot more time around agents. And I first thought maybe it was not a good idea for the agent to allow Tyrod Taylor to sign a 2-year deal for like $11 million. I think he's going to get $5 or $6 million next year because that's way below NFL starting quarterback pay. Any starting quarterback gets like $15 million if you're going to be the starter, unless it's maybe like a Case Keenum situation. And then I thought, but Tyrod Taylor actually has a chance now that the league is catching up to a quarterback of his skill set, Greg Roman, like the hottest offensive name right now, that he has a chance to earn $50 or more million if he is the starter next year. So that's something to think about. Maybe they draft somebody. What's the market going to be like for Melvin Gordon? See, here's a preview of what I'm going to say during the Arizona Rams. Would you sign Kenyon Drake or Melvin Gordon right now? Same amount of money.
Kenyon Drake, less miles.
Yeah, right. Who would have said that at the beginning of the year?
Nobody.
And Justin Jackson, speaking of Melvin Gordon, probably not going back. Maybe he and Anthony Lynn kissed and made up. For Kansas City, I actually think this is great, right? See, horse racing. This is, the Kansas City's been hanging back on the rail. They haven't been leading and setting the pace like Baltimore has. And these two teams played in 2 years in a row, excellent regular season game. May we see them again in the playoffs. Football gods, please. AFC Championship game. Patrick Mahomes, I think, is like, he's fine with that. Because he has a defense now. See, remember at the beginning of the year, we said, give Aaron Rodgers a defense. What do you got? A Super Bowl team? Well, maybe they will be, but not in the way we envisioned when we said that. But give Patrick Mahomes a defense.
Ooh, boy.
Here we go. They've got a defense. Damian Williams quietly back, as you said, the backfield. In the background here, I'm also thinking, Sammy Watkins, $13.75 million next year? Really? He hasn't even come close to earning that kind of money. So what's going to happen? Demarcus Robinson's a free agent. Byron Pringle, maybe he plays a bigger role for this team next year. Obviously, Mecole Hardman does. Maybe Mecole Hardman plays a bigger role even in the playoffs. And Patrick Mahomes, they came this close. We haven't forgotten that. They haven't forgotten that. Probably we will see them open up against New England. Divisional round, I hope. Don't mess it up, Reed. Don't lose to Tennessee or Pittsburgh or whoever. So we can all watch that together in Vegas.
Well, they can move up to the number 2 seed, number 3 right now. They can enter the playoffs number 2, 3, or 4.
Right.
Move up to number 2 if they defeat the Chargers and the Patriots lose to the Dolphins. So
they're not going to be number 2.
We'll continue on. Right. Please, Ryan Fitzpatrick, help us. Chicago and Minnesota is the next game up. And oof, you talk about the beginning of the year, and that's what's great about the end of the year. It's like, well, we get to see like what we thought of them before things started and then what we think about them now. Oof. What do you think? I know Booger McFarland says that quarterback wins is an overrated stat, but when you're Kirk Cousins and you never win in prime time, it's like, okay, awesome. You guys are the 6th seed now, Minnesota. And, Kirk Cousins on a large stage doesn't do good things. What about against Chicago, who's holding on with Matt Nagy and saying, well, one more year, we'll get it right.
Yeah, well, that's exactly where you're at. And you're hoping that Trubisky can end on somewhat of a positive note. And it was pretty positive through November, December until last week. David Montgomery, you want him to create a positive note? See, whatever people thought of David Montgomery, I really think that results-wise, if it was Jordan Howard taking the exact same touches on the exact same play calls as David Montgomery this year, Howard would have done better, I think.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Yeah. There's
I mean, some of that could be because Howard's experienced, but look, it wasn't the splash year they were looking for from David Montgomery. Javon Wims, Riley Ridley, maybe looking for some more playing time. Poor Taylor Gabriel, that concussion. I think he's due like $5-6 million next year. But it's all about quarterback decisions, right? Because, I think we know what's going to happen. We know they're just going to stick with Trubisky. They're not going to bring in competition for him, and that's going to be that. But do you consider it at least? If Cam Newton is really on the market, do you consider it at least Andy Dalton? Do you consider it? Because Dalton's been a good extension of the quarterback, extension of the coach quarterback. I'll cite something that I was telling Cecil before we came on. Ben Fennell is one of the best follows on Twitter if you are serious about how you consume football. 2 N's, 2 L's. 72 plays the 49ers had of 20-plus yards this year on offense. Every single one in structure. None of them outside of structure. So that's what I think Matt Nagy, like what we wanted to see Matt Nagy, what we saw at times last year from the Chicago offense, right? Mitchell Trubisky wasn't extending. When they were putting up all those points last year, Trubisky wasn't extending plays and pulling a rabbit out of a hat. It was play design. It was play execution. So Andy Dalton could do that. On the Minnesota side, oh my. Let me put it this way, Cease. If we were doing a fantasy football playoff preview, right? Because in playoff fantasy football, you have to also not just wager something on how you think the players will perform, but how their teams will perform, how deep they make it into the playoffs. Minnesota just feels like a one and done team right now. Really? Minnesota's going to go into New Orleans or Seattle or San Francisco and win right now? I don't think so. I don't see that happening. It's Kirk Cousins, like you said. We'll see about Dalvin Cook. As far as someone to watch in this game, I guess Laquan Treadwell. For a few weeks, folks, go back, cue up the tape. He looked like a better wide receiver in the little bit we saw him this year than he ever did before he was cut. So maybe a career near-death experience. He's still only, 24? And sees those old miss receivers are starting to hit now. Maybe he's going to catch up.
Well, maybe he's going to be like Rashad Perriman, right?
Ooh.
We've got other guys around the league. I know we're waiting forever for Cordero Patterson or whatever, but we've seen it. If that first round talent can still come through like it did for Rashad Perriman with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We'll get to them in a couple of games because here's Miami, New England. That's the next game up. Okay, Kansas City, you're not going to be number 2 because the Dolphins aren't going to beat the Patriots. But Ryan Fitzpatrick, open to playing and what's happening on next year, and the Dolphins will draft their quarterback of the future, whoever that is. Not going to be Joe Burrow. So we'll see again what happens with Josh Rosen. Who the hell knows there? Speaking of first round talents, and maybe not as motivated as you need to be off the field. Let's talk about both of these sides, with the Patriots trying to build some sort of momentum themselves as they head into the postseason, not only with the target on their back, Bloom, but also with teams not afraid of them anymore. No, there's no more fear factor where it's like, oh, I don't know what they're going to throw at us. It's like now you're just like, I know what they can do, and it's not much.
No, it's not. So it's funny you mentioned Josh Rosen. I forgot about him. What's his 2020 going to hold? Could he be another one of these late redemption stories? For Miami, I just want to say this, Cease. It's like an epitaph for the Miami 2019 season, right? So going into this season for Miami, like think of it as a television show or a movie, like that just sounds boring, right? And then the first month it was. I mean, unless you just enjoyed like the beat down that your team was giving the Dolphins, or you took advantage of it on fantasy and put some wind in your fantasy team sails. It was entertaining football. And by the end of this year, it's like that was fun. That was entertaining. I enjoyed that more than I thought I would. This Miami Dolphins team, Ryan Fitzpatrick. You got Mike Gesicki and Devontae Parker, the Gase effect, the weight lifted. From a dynasty point of view, Isaiah Ford, Matt Waldman favorite. They got 3 first-round picks. The Flores plan, it's on. You have our attention. Let's see what you're going to do for Act 2 now. Miami, Tua. New England's going to get that number 2 seed. But the mystique is gone. And see, it kind of is embodied in the way they got caught filming at Cincinnati. It used to be, I've talked about this on the show a couple of times this year, when something would go wrong against you, the Patriots, they're going to cheat. They're going to find a way to undermine us. They're going to find a way to get an unfair edge. And that's a psychological edge for the Patriots. If you think when things start to go wrong, it's because of some power they have. But now that power is like someone security in Cincinnati saying, what are you doing? This is the year I think that they're a mortal team. Could they scrape and claw and somehow get past Kansas City or Baltimore?
Could Belichick outcoach Andy Reid in the playoffs? Yes.
Right.
Of course.
Yeah. I mean, you come up with some things that just in that one game sample that frustrate. Well, they're not. We already saw last year. It's a better defense though. So we'll see. This is what makes the playoffs so great. N'Keal Harry, Jacoby Myers. I think this actually could be a good N'Keal Harry week. Here's some fantasy for you. Play New England's offense, right? Like just Sony Michel. I mean, Tom Brady, whatever. This is a good fantasy tip for your Week 17 lineups. They got to touch on New England for sure. But yeah, I want to see Mahomes go to Foxborough. I want to see a rematch and maybe a different outcome in a few weeks.
Atlanta, Tampa up next, and Atlanta's keeping everybody. And hey, if you feel like, hey, play for your coach, who are the teams that play for their coach? Atlanta was, and they saved Dan Quinn's job. It's fantastic. So, I mean, we could talk about this game, certainly, and everything that goes on, and we'll get to Jameis on the other side. But for me, it's just first and foremost, congratulations, Atlanta, because you guys, you players played for this. You got this. Now, obviously do some building and get back on track next year. But it's incredible information that was released this morning, this Thursday morning.
Matt Waldman made a really good case for this. Waldman watches the Falcons for our recaps. So when you get Easter egg Matt Waldman content, and he made a pretty strong case for this outcome. So I trust Matt. And, there's something to be said for continuity. And see, there's something to be said for actually accurately assessing who you would replace, like who's the pool, and whether it actually would be an improvement. So, give it another chance. Watch Quadri Olson and Brian Hill. We'll see about Devontae Freeman in the $6 million or so he's due next year. Russell Gage too. I think they weren't even sure if he was going to be a defensive back or a wide receiver when they drafted him, right? LSU. I bet if Joe Burrow was throwing to him, they would have known. So yeah, this is another one. Of all the teams that aren't playing for something playoff-wise, Atlanta might be one of the best spots for fantasy this week because they're facing Tampa. The Jameis Winston decision, is that what's next? That sees this morning, New Orleans works out Antonio Brown. Atlanta announces they're keeping the coaching staff. Is Tampa going to announce they're keeping Winston? Next time to an extension. Ronald Jones trying to create some momentum. Rashad Perryman has made himself a lot of money, like tens of millions of dollars. As long as he doesn't get hurt, knock on wood, this week, because he provides the size, speed element. Well, it's what Baltimore wanted when they drafted him in the first round.
Right.
He's providing it. It's rare. It makes a pass offense go. What Rashad Perryman provides makes a pass offense go. It loosens everything up for all the other things that you want to do. And you can say, well, small sample size, why should a team invest in him? Well, what else is there going to be to invest? Robbie Anderson. So Robbie Anderson's going to set the market here. Perryman's going to come in here. And that's going to be what GMs are thinking. See, what GMs are doing, mocking up the offseason already.
Right.
Okay, do we give 60 million, 40 guaranteed, or 30 guaranteed to Robbie Anderson over 4 years, or we do maybe 40 million with 20 guaranteed to Brashad Perryman, with Devontae Parker's contract kind of being a guide there. So that's something really interesting to think about. OJ Howard, who was not available for a trade, one more year on his rookie contract. Let's see about the 5th-year option. That's a whole other fun layer, 5th-year options. Maybe we'll do a show about that, Cease.
Here's a fun layer, Bloom. People think tampering begins in March. Tampering never stops.
It never stops.
Yeah. You know, GM's being like, can we get Brashad? GMs have already talked to him.
Speaking of agents.
Right.
So, you know, Justin Watson, Penn, he has a chance to do a little more considering that Brashad Perryman's going to get paid somewhere next year. Lots of intrigue for this game. 2 teams that are not going to the playoffs.
Bloom, remind me, I got to tell you something off air because I was thinking about Arthur Blank, and it's like, okay, there's a guy. He didn't get all of his money making bad decisions.
Home Depot.
Yes, and there are maybe some new owners in the league that are trying to follow Dan Snyder's footsteps instead of Arthur Blank's footsteps.
This is a segue, isn't it?
Let me check. Yeah, it is actually. Sorry. New Orleans and Carolina. I don't think your owner should be writing scouting reports on players. I'm just saying, if you want that to be a lassie bark, so be it. But like, I don't think owners should be telling football guys what to do. Not us, but actual football guys.
Football guys should be telling owners what to do.
Like Norv Turner, pretty sure Norv Turner knows a thing or two. And all right, let's talk about this game, Bloom, and let's talk about Will Grier being forced down their throats because, well, it wasn't good last time out. It's not going to be good this time out. You're going to get Christian McCaffrey to 1,000, which I think is the most rare club in the NFL, even more special than 2,000 yards rushing because we have, 7, 8, 2,000-yard rushers now, although it will be more rare going forward just because teams don't feed running backs. But 1,000 is so special. Roger Craig has done it. Marshall Faulk's done it. That's it. And Christian McCaffrey's going to do it. And he always could. We've talked about it on this show. Like, the potential is there, and he's doing it. So get him at 67 yards receiving and, and shut him down, right? Just let somebody else play after he gets his yardage because Christian McCaffrey is just such a joy to watch. We get special treat. Lamar Jackson we get to watch. We get to watch Christian McCaffrey, Michael Thomas do his thing, right? So, these special type of players, just fun to watch. And, of course, Michael Thomas on the other side. This is the Saints going away, of course, and playing in Carolina. We'll see what happens there. And the Saints, well, here we go. Saints move back into 3rd seed after the Packers' victory on Monday night. So the Saints have a number of scenarios for getting back into position for a first-round bye, which includes a win combined with a 49ers loss, a win and a Packers loss, and wins by the Packers and Seahawks. So we'll see what happens this week.
Yeah, this is, so on the New Orleans side, I think they're still going to end up being the 3 seed. I'm pretty sure that the outcome of the San Francisco-Seattle game, as long as Green Bay wins, they need Seattle to win to be the 2 seed. And that's it, basically. If San Francisco wins, then they're not going to be able to jump any higher. This is another spot you want. I'll trust Sean Payton when he says no about resting starters, even though there's an argument that really it doesn't matter what happens in this game. They're probably going to be the 3rd seed. Antonio Brown worked out for the Saints today. Well, we'll see. I did see a few people. I'm not sure what you think of Mike Freeman. His name doesn't come up much. Mike Freeman said, like, unequivocally, like, he will ruin your team. Like, when are owners going to get it? Like, you just no. We'll see. I'm not saying I agree with that or have any reason to believe that's true or to say believe it's not true. Something to think about. Taysom Hill's an interesting guy to watch. In this year of all these stories and things like that, have we ever seen anybody like Taysom Hill ever? Is there anybody you say, like, I remember a player like Taysom Hill? I remember a player who would, like, block a punt and then come on the field and catch a touchdown after that.
I guess maybe Cordell, but he was kicking punts because he was punting. He was a receiver and he was a quarterback.
Yeah, that's it. And from New Orleans, by the way, Cordell. Carolina side, who's going to be the head coach? Who's going to be the quarterback?
Why is your owner writing scouting reports on players?
Right. Well, he's going to, he's convinced of his own brilliance and he's going to put his stamp on this. And you're right about Christian McCaffrey. He's been truly great with a capital G this year, but because it hasn't been in the name of wins, in the name of a big season, it doesn't have that sparkle around it that it should. I don't think we're going to see DJ Moore in this one. Maybe we'll see a little more Ian Thomas, who Greg Olson's TV career holds. So yeah, that was a wonderful, unintentional, brilliant segue, Cecil.
Mm-hmm. Yep, there we go. Next, this one's not a good segue because I just said for like 5 seconds. Washington and Dallas. Okay, Washington with Case Keenum. And Dallas just being Dallas. Dallas, after losing to Sunday in Philadelphia, the Cowboys need to beat Washington and for the Giants to beat the Eagles in order to win the NFC East. Otherwise, they'll miss the playoffs. And, well, once they do that, we want everyone to have a job forever, right, Bloom?
Right.
Jason Garrett is probably not going to have his job, and his contract is expiring, so they don't have to fire him. They just have to choose not to bring him back.
Right.
But to couple a win over Washington, okay, whatever. Dallas at home. And by the way, Dak's not throwing again this week. Still doing the little hip, little quarterback thing. But then the Giants beating the Eagles, like I don't see that happening. So I see Dallas missing the playoffs, and I see Jason Garrett looking on LinkedIn.
Right. Well, and really quickly, as an aside on Garrett, couldn't you imagine bring him in as a quarterback coach? Right. I mean, that's his next job, quarterback coach. Yeah. Wouldn't you imagine him actually like being a really good quarterback coach at this point? In so much is the weight that's lifted of not working for Jerry Jones in that position any longer. Like he was groomed for it for decades, really, and it culminated in, Dez caught it. I don't know, and it didn't. So it didn't happen. But isn't the pressure of that, all of that weight and decades and Jerry Jones off your shoulders, something that you just get back to being a football coach again and restore your love of being around football? I'd hire him as a quarterback. If the Steelers hired him as a quarterback coach, I'd say, okay, I'm curious. I want to see what happens here. Anyway, Case Keenum, his off-brand Fitzmagic. Maybe we'll see him start. Darius Geis may have a healthy 2020. See, so if I could like throw a penny into a pond or a fountain, and wish for some things in 2020, one of the first ones would be Darius Geis to stay healthy, have a 16-game season. Get to see what this guy can do. Steven Sims is coming on. Washington's actually done some decent stuff this year to turn the franchise around. Dak Prescott got a win to hang around, as you laid it out. Sees they still need the Giants to help. The Amari Cooper decision. I guess they're going to pay Amari Cooper. I guess I don't know why they didn't do it before. I want to see more Blake Jarwin. I want to see more Tony Pollard. These are talented players who deserve bigger roles. It's time as a flat circle since the Jimmy Johnson / Barry Switzer era there. The Cowboys underachieve. They're not managed well. They're going to try to do some dramatic solution to it. Like we just do this trip around the merry-go-round. Here we are again.
And I love week 17. Soul Brother brings it up in the chat room about holding Steven Sims Jr. to see what happens next season. Yeah, in week 17, we always get those type of stories. And Sims has shown up before week 17. But we'll always talk about Willie Parker against the Bills. And then the next year, running for 1,000 yards. So I always got the radar up here in week 17. Raiders in Denver. Raiders with something to play for. They need a bunch of stuff to happen. This starts the same times as the Titans game and the Steelers game, which we'll get to. It is a Broncos show. So let's talk about Drew Lock going up against this Raiders defense. Should look pretty good for Cortland Sutton and everything. And just building that Vic Fangio culture and then building that hope that is real and legitimate in Denver for the first time in forever. Going up against a Raiders team that's probably not going to have Josh Jacobs. I guess we could debate that. Like he had surgery on Christmas Day to clean up an infection in his left leg. He's got a shoulder problem that's knocked him out for a couple of weeks. I just don't see him playing. Maybe he tries to tough it out and gut it out. But this is also a Broncos run defense that is much different than the Raiders saw in week 1 because you no longer have Shelby Harrison nose tackle. You've got Mike Purcell, and he's doing good things there in the middle. So let's talk about this game. For me, Bloom here in Denver, of course, talking to Locke and Fangio and all the guys this week, like you get a sense that they really want this one. It won't mean anything this year, but it says so much about next year that they're going to go for.
Yeah. Well, in a few outcomes, games Denver let slip away, or we'd be talking about them in the 6 seed mix, or maybe clinching it. Las Vegas Raiders. Did you see the stadium, Cease?
Looks like a Roomba.
Kind of. Yeah, it looks like a Roomba, or like part of like Darth Vader's empire, So, we'll see, man. It's going to be interesting. Gruden. You can look at the worst losses of the Raiders. As I think I said this week ago, you can look at the Raiders' worst losses and say Gruden's a joke. You look at some of the great competitive games they've had this year and say he's getting it going in the right direction. They have maybe a decision to make about Derek Carr, kind of. DeAndre Washington and Jalen Richard are going to be free agents behind Josh Jacobs. That'll be interesting. Hunter Renfrow wowed last week with all the LSU talk, I should say. There's Clemson again. Clemson, Ohio State. That's going to be a pretty good game, too. On the Denver side, Drew Lock. I mean, see, how much has your job and what you're going to be talking about and thinking about this offseason changed because of what Drew Lock has done over the last month?
It's the first offseason since Peyton retired that we won't be talking about quarterback in the draft.
Right. And breaking them down. Should Deshaun Hamilton, Tim Patrick have a chance to give the Broncos, I've mentioned this already, something to think about as they maybe draft a wide receiver, maybe sign a wide receiver, looking at who's going to play opposite Courtland Sutton, Noah Fant, what his development is going to look like. But as we talked about before we came on the air, but the main thing is Rich Scangarello needs to be calling up Kyle Shanahan and saying, can we hang out? Like I'll buy the beer and pizza, watch football, talk, something. Help me. Please.
Maybe you could just go to Mike Shanahan's house.
All right.
Right here in Cherry Hills. And
you're like the son I never had.
Shanahan holds like watch parties.
That's awesome.
Yeah. From usually media members or former players. But like going to Mike Shanahan's house for the weekend, watch 8 hours of film without a bathroom break.
Cecil, would you go like look in the medicine cabinet and stuff like that?
I've been to Mike's house before.
Then I won't ask you that.
No.
No, you never would look in the medicine cabinet.
No. What are you talking about? Y'all act like crack is so bad. Let's talk about Arizona and Los Angeles. There's our football crack. I don't know.
Yeah.
Arizona and the Rams. Rams defense is getting beat up. Arizona's offense has got a little bit of a groove. And, well, we'll see what these two teams are doing next year because this year got away from them.
Yeah. Well, look, with the Kyler Cliff thing, they did enough to be credible going into year 2.
Yes.
To say, let's see. Vance Joseph, maybe that's a little different. Chandler Jones, by the way. Chandler Jones is very quietly putting together, there's more work to be done, a Hall of Fame resume. I mean, if he continues to play at this level for like 2 or 3 more years, Hall of Fame resume. Syracuse. Q's in the house. Is it going to be Kyler Murray or Brett Hundley? Brett Hundley's still only 26. You can do a little bit to show that he can be a backup. Again, the question I posed about free agency looking ahead. If you're going to put 3 years, $30 million with 15 guaranteed for a running back on the table, do you do it for Drake or Gordon at this point? We'll see. And what's David Johnson's future, by the way? Reunited with Bruce Arians? He's due $10 million guaranteed, but at the same time, and see, this is a good kind of team construction question. Do you not move on from a player because of guaranteed money if you know that player doesn't fit in your plans? They've got a mess at wide receiver. Christian Kirk a little banged up, hasn't really took that next big step in year 2. Was there maybe against Miami, and they still have Hakeem Butler, Andy Isabella. These are when AJ Brown is out there, when Terry McLaurin, Deebo Samuel, when these guys are out there doing this stuff, and Andy Isabella, Hakeem Butler crickets. That's something they're going to be thinking about in the offseason. McVay humbled, Goff humbled this year. What do they do? Go back to the drawing board. Maybe we'll see some more Malcolm Brown. Maybe John Kelly will get called up from the practice squad. I still believe in John Kelly. I'm not giving up on John Kelly just yet. Josh Reynolds is putting together a resume for free agency sooner or later. This is a team, the Rams, and it's this is where the Rams are. See, so they're going to finish at 8-8 or 9-7, right? They beat some good teams this year. They lost to some good teams this year. They have some great players. And this is a disappointing year. This wasn't a year that the team, there were some games where they were a kind of a punchline. There were some moments in the season where it felt like they were like floundering in the, splashing in the water, like someone throw me a life preserver. There's still all the pieces there. Now we saw Atlanta get to the precipice, and we're celebrating that they didn't fire their head coach. Is that where the Rams are going to be in a year or two? Are they going to bounce back? Lots to think about here.
Eagles Giants up next. The Eagles a chance to win the NFC East finally. It only takes till week 17, but they could do it. Looks like Jordan Howard's back. So there's that. But Miles Sanders still the lead back there. Looks like Carson Wentz still throwing to a bunch of non-household names. So there's that. And then the Giants side, some exciting pieces, but it's obviously a next year type of moment.
Yeah. When you're in for Philly. Philly has really grown into this, like, against all odds. Like I said, cockroaches, I mean, in the best way, kind of team mentality. Like when they're counted out, they're still very much alive. Is that something they could carry into the playoffs if they win this game? The Giants, I mean, I'm going to say the Giants have at least like a 10 to 20% chance to win this game. I can see the Giants winning this game. The Eagles aren't imposing in any way right now. That's why it's tough to see them. Maybe they could beat a Seattle or San Francisco at home. After that, it's a little tougher to picture them going farther in the playoffs, but they're like, that's just what we want to hear. Please write us off. Will Zach Ertz be back for this game? Even if he's back, is he more of a decoy? Dallas Goedert growing up, Miles Sanders growing up, Greg Ward growing up pretty quickly as a number one receiver. And that's why it's hard to see them going too far in the playoffs. Remember, we had visions of Deshaun Jackson and Alshon Jeffrey and Zach Ertz and all the things this offense was going to do. Now, on the other hand, now we don't have to have a vision, Cease. We got Daniel Jones to Sterling Shepard to Saquon Barkley. Darius Slayton will probably be back for this one. He's been one of the breakout rookies that very few people saw coming. He's kind of done a DJ Chark within the space of 1 year. You've got Golden Tate. So, and Daniel Jones. I mean, I know that I kind of made fun of the disharmonic convergence, Cincinnati and Miami going to overtime at the same time as the Giants and watching. These were the top 4 teams in the draft, i.e. the bottom 4 teams in the NFL. But I think Daniel Jones is doing important things to gain the confidence of his teammates, including Caden Smith, by the way, who's been a surprise 6th-round breakout player with Evan Ingram banged up. I think the Giants are on schedule. I mean, if you had a choice between the Giants roster or the Cardinals roster right now, look, Gettleman gets the last laugh for now. As the pieces are in place, and I think that we're going to see this team. It's not, when we see like the Vegas win-loss totals, it's not a question of will the Giants improve. It's how much will they improve. Could they contend for this division that is going to have the worst record of any division winner this year?
Oh, of course. Yeah. And if the Giants are on schedule, Bloom, what's that mean about the Colts and Jaguars, our next game up? And probably my least favorite game to talk about.
Yeah. Well, with Indy, it's the Brissett decision. Some guys I'll be watching like Zach Pascal and Mo Alley Cox. It's all about the quarterback decision. And I think this is what's going to happen, Cease. The narrative is going to be, it was the injury. It was a knee injury. And now that he's, whatever, hopefully he'll end on a high note. He didn't really have to last week because they blew out the competition. So I just think that the narrative is going to be, we're going to stick with Brissett for another year. Maybe not sign him to any extension past next year. Is Doug Marrone going to be back? Is David Caldwell going to be back? It sounds like Shad Khan has decided, well, we got Tom Coughlin out. Let's see if this thing can work without Tom Coughlin, but with the same pieces we had. Okay. Again, I mean, maybe if you look at what the alternatives are, I don't know if that's what his thinking is. Gardner Minshew, week 1 starter. Again, with Nick Foles. I mean, if you've already decided that Foles isn't the answer, I think he's guaranteed like $11 million next year or something. Do you keep someone on your roster in the name of that, or you try to move him maybe to Chicago, maybe to Matt Nagy? DJ Chark had a tremendous year, even though it didn't end on a high note. Maybe he'll add one more little high note as a coda. Chris Conley, watching some of these guys for the future now. But yeah, the Jags are just difficult to parse, Cease, because they had a great draft. They had a great draft this year. I mean, you can just say Josh Allen and Jamal Taylor and Gardner Minshew. They had a great draft. We'll see about Quincy Williams, Quinnen's little brother. But at the same time, that they're another team that, I mean, they're not as bad off as the Jets or the Browns, but they're probably rateable, in terms of like getting it going in the right direction. They're about as aimless and drifting right now.
Bloom, do you want a Lassie bark?
Oh, please. I love them.
Jacoby Brissett might not be the Colts quarterback next year.
Okay.
Let's just say that.
I like it.
Yeah, so, I can definitely see the point of view, like, just keep him around, whatever, but there's also buzz, rumblings, whatever, about, like, he's saying he's fine, and he's not. This is just him.
Mm-hmm.
This is just him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We'll see which side wins out. Steelers in Baltimore, it is a Steelers show, kind of, sometimes, when they're good and relevant, and Hey, make it the playoffs. Like, if it's not about the rings, baby, I don't want to. I don't get excited about it. Come on, it's got 6. Let's go for. If it's not going for 7, like being excited about making the playoffs as a Steelers fan is a slap in the face, in my opinion. Bloom. We may see things differently that way as Steelers fans. Ravens are resting everybody. Steelers may turn to Paxton Lynch, and I'm sorry I said that while you're drinking because I don't want to make you spit on your microphone.
We've contemplated it enough now that it doesn't make me go into some.
Okay. And it's just like, oh my God, we're there. That's where we're at.
Well, see, as a Steelers fan, if you want to say we don't accept this, I think it's just that even without Ben Roethlisberger, even with no quarterback, like if we ranked, I don't know how many quarterbacks started a game in the NFL this year, Cease, but like 2 of the bottom 5 or 10 would be the 2 that started most of the year for the Steelers. And yet, there's a game in San Francisco they should have won. There's a game at home against Seattle they could have won. There's a game at home against Baltimore they should have won. I don't know how you lose to the Jets. I have no idea how you do that. So they should be in the playoffs. You're right. This team should be a playoff team. Again, without a quarterback, not a team that could go to the Super Bowl, a team that could go into New England and hang around, maybe. Although chances are they're going to go, if they do make the playoffs, it'll be at Kansas City, and no, they won't hang around. This is the year of whatever. And it's funny, see, we already had within like a few days of each other this past week, worries about Ben Roethlisberger, and then Ben Roethlisberger saying, what worries? You know, are you kidding me? Everything, I'm still back. The backfield, James Conner, that's something that happened this year. James Conner kind of decisively showed us he's not going to hold up under a heavy workload. He's a committee back. At least we have Deontay Johnson and James Washington. One thing that stays constant, Steelers are going to find wide receivers and they're going to develop them, which makes me want to say with a heavy heart, because, man, we travel over a lot of ground on a football season. Rest in peace, Darryl Drake. And there's a great Tyler Dunn piece. Every piece, to say a great Tyler Dunn piece. I was going to say, that's just a Tyler Dunn piece. That's a great piece. About the Steelers and Mike Tomlin. And they talked about how just how much of a shock and a devastation Drake's death left for this team. You know, going back to Mike Tomlin when he first became a wide receiver coach, and Drake was I want to say the offensive coordinator at Baylor. By the way, that's your next Dallas coach, the Baylor coach. This is Lincoln Riley. Anyway, I'm getting off on a tangent now, but that Tomlin called up Drake like in the 90s when he was just getting started in coaching, saying, "Can you give me some help?" Like what Scangarello should do. So that, you know, this team has overcome a lot this year, including their quarterback. And, you know, Jags fans, Chicago fans know about overcoming their quarterback. I mean, in some ways, this team that makes the playoffs is a version of that Jags and Chicago teams from the last 2 years. Although some people are arguing that that's Buffalo this year. It's more of a Thursday night thing. Not that we're doing the Thursday night show this week. On the Baltimore side, Robert Griffin III, speaking of making yourself money, now he's under contract next year for just like a couple of million. But he can give people something to think about. Justice Hill, excited to see him. Maybe we'll see some more Hayden Hurst. I think that it's wise to let Hollywood Brown and let Mark Andrews sit. I mean, maybe your one token series, let him rest. Maybe some Miles Boykin, maybe some Jaleel Scott, Cecil, New Mexico State Aggies, baby, Las Cruces. By the way, Luminarias, they do Luminarias in Denver.
I don't think so. I don't think so.
But you're familiar with them.
Yes.
Luminarias. Yeah. New Mexico is the land of Luminarias. And I think that on the in Las Cruces, there's like a display of like 7,500 of them. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, because it still is kind of Christmas, look up Luminarias. It's a beautiful thing. It's, you know, the lights, like the light the runway for Santa sleigh or baby Jesus or whatever you want it to be. It's a beautiful thing, beautiful tradition. One of the things I remember most about growing up until I was 7 in New Mexico.
Let's go Titans over the Texans. Titans with the one team that's kind of in the driver's seat of these 3 teams, Raiders, Steelers, Titans, that are vying for that 6th spot. Titans win against the Texans. Bloom, they're in. So are they going to do that?
Yes. I mean, yes.
As long as Derrick Henry's playing, I'm picking the Titans.
Yeah, I mean, right? Like someone said earlier, like if there was an anchorman kind of, you know, gang fight of trios, and it was Johnny Smith and A.J. Brown and Derrick Henry, like that's the one that I think is going to win. Yeah, I mean, look, there's a thing too of subconsciously with Houston knowing that this game is, I mean, theoretically they could, I think, move up if this happens or that happens, but it's very unlikely. You know, they know they don't need this game, and at some point, I do think Bill O'Brien's going to pull the starters here. and Corey Davis is going to play. And what's interesting here, Cease, is we're setting up the Tennessee wins going back to Kansas City. And there is some psychological edge that some of the players on this team went into Kansas City and won. Now, it was Patrick Mahomes, Kansas City, and not Alex Smith, Kansas City. Still, it's the same. Same idea of this is an imposing team. And frankly, they deserve to make the playoffs over the Steelers. I want to see them in the playoffs over the Steelers if I wasn't a Steelers fan. On the Houston side, we'll see some DeAndre Carter. Kiki Cutie, maybe. Hasn't been a good year for him. Oh my. Who had a worse year, Kiki Cutie or Dante Pettis? Jordan Thomas, maybe. See a little more of him. But yeah, Houston, isn't this just like what we saw back at Clemson? Here's your Houston postseason plan. Deshaun, go do what you do, and hopefully you'll win for us.
San Francisco at Seattle, the final game we're going to preview in the Week 17 preview here on the Audible. And San Francisco 49ers will find out in Week 17 whether they have home field advantage throughout the playoffs or play on the road in the wild card round. That's how much is on the line here. It is in Seattle. You got your wish, Bloom. Marshawn Lynch. This is my son back for the Seahawks. So let's see who comes out on top.
Yeah, right. Wow. Like you said, the difference for San Francisco in this game is just massive, depending on what they do. They've just been playing epic game after epic game. Just leaving it all out there, and just wonder at some point if they run out of gas. The defense seems like they're running out of gas. But Debo, Manuel Sanders, George Kittle, Jimmy Garoppolo, Raheem Mostert, with Kyle Shanahan calling the plays. On the Seattle side, they even seem more like, seriously, Cease, which team is better, Tennessee or Green Bay? Which team is better, Tennessee or Seattle? Either way, Tennessee. it's not obvious, right? You're talking about the potential 6th seed in the AFC,
right? And
a team that could be the teams that could be 1 and 3 or whatever, however it'll work out. So we'll see. On the Seattle side, again, and Cease, I feel like with the Seattle thing, some of it is like, I don't know whether we should be congratulating Pete Carroll for this amazing job, taking this team and having them overachieve. Chase Stewart's been doing some great work showing how they just allot their points. Like, not that you could really consciously do this, but they score just enough to win. And when they lose, they get blown out. So that, it's like when the Pirates won the World Series against the Roger Maris Yankees. They got destroyed in the games that they lost, but they would always eke out a win by like 1 run. 2 baseball references as much. It's what happens when you have to go for an hour. I know. It's, will you let me have an hour? And that's what's going to happen. So Russell Wilson. And so, like, on one hand, I want to say, should we be congratulating Pete Carroll on this amazing job this year? Or should we be saying, again, if you just, they're going to have to let Russell, Cease, you're down to, and I know Marshawn Lynch is in good shape and Robert Turbin's in good shape, and they're saying Travis Homer. Actually, Pete Carroll's like, it's Travis is ready to carry the load.
Yes.
But isn't this the football god saying, run the offense through Russell Wilson? Forget about the run.
So will they listen to the football gods?
Will they? Because, see, I know that this would seem to Pete Carroll, who's like, 4th down, we didn't make it. I'm never doing 4th down again. This is Pete Carroll. As much as we love Pete Carroll, there's something in him that seems to be very rigid. But wouldn't it make sense to just go to the whiteboard? And even though you don't have Josh Gordon, you still have Malik Turner and David Moore, and of course you got DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. Travis Homer's a good receiver out of the backfield. Isn't Travis Homer more like a 3rd down back, hurry up back?
Yeah.
Anyway, than like a run downhill smash mouth back?
By the way, Bloom, I know, and this is the football god speaking, by the way.
Yeah.
I know that they're not going to the Super Bowl because they didn't sign CJ Anderson, who had a great workout from my sources. But my sources say that he was told, well, the other guys know the offense. That's why we're signing Turbin and Lynch. So there you go.
So wouldn't it make sense, Cease? And we're spending a little more time on this game because it's the last game, and we have a little more time because it's not quite an hour yet.
And it's not Indy and Jacksonville.
Right. Wouldn't the ultimate move here be to throw an offense out there that San Francisco hasn't seen, that New Orleans hasn't seen, that Green Bay hasn't seen, so that they have to really do like a total prep and not go on all the tape of how to stop the Seattle running game? They won't have the boldness to do it. That's how you do a Super Bowl run, though. That's how you do a Super Bowl run. I'm surprised coaches haven't contemplated this more, honestly. The idea of like how much of an advantage do you get, even if your guys are less prepared to do what you're asking them to do, if the opposition is less prepared to counteract it. Anyway, we'll see some Russell Wilson. We'll see if Tyler Lockett in the disappearing act, what he does. This is going to be a great clash. I don't care what anybody says. You would much rather be playing at home next week or in 2 weeks than going to Philadelphia. I don't want to go to Philadelphia and play the Eagles, a team that has that dangerous mentality of, if you were writing us off, if you think we don't have a chance, that's exactly where we want things to be. It's the playoffs. So absolutely, there's so much on the line here. Again, I think San Francisco's defense is wearing down a little bit. Seattle's defense is obviously very vulnerable. I mean, look what Kenyon Drake did last week against them. Jadeveon Clowney's going to gut it out and play. This is going to be exciting and fantastic. And really, it's a precursor to exactly what the numbers point to, which is if one game, maybe one kick, one play, because that's what this game was like the first time. See, how many plays were there in the first Seattle-San Francisco game that could have turned the game one way or the other? Half of them?
Yeah.
I mean, one play can decide the difference between the 1 seed and the 5 seed. That's the NFC this year. That's the NFL in any year. So fantasy football was great. Doing this journey with y'all was great. But I think what really keeps us coming back is the drama, the epic struggles and scope and stage of the playoffs. It's a different kind of football. And I think we feel it. We're more dialed in no matter what. And you can do playoff fantasy football, write my playoff rankings and all that stuff, playoff DFS and so on, showdown slates and so on. But I think it's just the intense drama, Cease, and the idea we can all reflect to some point in our life when we've invested not days, not weeks, not months, but years of our life in something. And like raising a kid, when you invest years of your life in something to see what the outcome is, because every season is the culmination of that effort of that year, but really of these coaches and players' careers. That's why winning a Super Bowl is the pinnacle, right? That's why when we look at a player's Hall of Fame resume, or even when we just remember a player, like whether they won a Super Bowl or not, is something that changes the lighting.
And how many times do we see not the best team in the league win the Super Bowl? Because you mentioned doing something different. Bill Cowher gets a Super Bowl because he did something different in the postseason. Joe Flacco gets a Super Bowl because, they fired Cam Cameron and they put Jim Caldwell in there and they went on a run and Flacco was unconscious. You could say the same thing with Nick Foles doing things differently than Carson Wentz. Like, why wouldn't Pete Carroll do something like that?
Yeah, we'll see.
No matter
what, it'll be memorable. We got the college football playoff tomorrow, and we have the football journey again. Coaching changes, free agency, the draft, so much going on. It's great to be in this virtual place that we have. So he's not in the same room, but in the same headspace with all these great people. And we'll be back for playoff previews. Again, feedback, folks. Whatever we can do, and this also includes other platforms. They say the kids have things like Twitch. That's a good thing if you're twitching, or WhatsApp.
Yeah, we can via StreamYard, which always turns into a commercial for StreamYard, but good because they have a great product. With StreamYard, we can live stream to like 5 different platforms.
Yeah.
So if you want to see us on Facebook Live, I can hook that up. You want to see us on Periscope, if that's still a thing, I can hook that up. Twitch, I can hook that up. Like StreamYard's very, very adept.
We want to serve. We want to serve you. Like if you're listening right now or watching.
Yeah. How do you listen? How do you watch? That's why we're on Spotify this year, because so many people are on Spotify. It's like, let's get on Spotify.
And that includes content. We'll have the coaching carousel. We'll have the All-Star Game road trip, but also, just hanging out more and engaging more because we love it. Like we love the time we get to spend with you. It's not a job. It's not work. It's something we look forward to. And always the time I get to spend with you, Cecil, in a couple of weeks, we'll be in Las Vegas for the Football Guys retreat. And in the meantime, there'll be football drama everywhere.
I'm going to go pass out. That's it for the Week 17 preview here on the Audible, the Footballguys.com podcast. He's Sigmund. Follow him on Twitter at Sigmund Bloom. The show is at the Audible. I'm at Cecil Lammey saying thank you all for listening and watching. Stay tuned. And as always, stay frosty.